This video is brought to you via Drug Mountain. Lathril Blade of the Elves versus Breya Ethereum Shaper. And that's a one-lander with no dorks in it, so we'll have to go down a card here and get into a bunch of lands. So let's, we'll keep that and get rid of a forest. So we start things off, we'll go for the Jiraga Tree Speaker. We can level that up to level 1 on turn 2, and then it will tap down for 2 mana. Which it doesn't look like we're going to be able to make use of. We can tap this down to level itself up though. And it's just a tap land from our opponent. Shamanic Revelation, so we'll just get a black mana out ready to get our commander down next turn, assuming that the mana dork stays in play. And then we will level her up, and yeah, we'll just level her up to level 2 as well. I wouldn't have thought that getting her all the way up to level 5 will be relevant, but you never know. A Vedalken Engineer for our opponent. This is a multiplayer version of the Lathril deck, by the way. Just trying to gauge some reaction on whether people want to see her or not. And we do get into another land, so yeah, we'll probably get a few more elves out before we go for that. So let's get down our commander and we can get the summoning sickness off of that. This might be useful to protect our opponent from a lightning bolt or something like that, or a mana crypt from our opponent. We'll get the Breya into play. And a Sword of Feast and Famine. Equipping the Engineer with the Sword of Feast and Famine, and swinging in, they're not going to be able to block anyway. So we'll have to discard a card here. I think it has to be Elven Ambush. I was thinking about Azuri, but I think it has to be Elven Ambush. We'll rely on the Lathril to make a bunch of tokens, hopefully. They untap their lands, so I assume that they want to use that for counter magic. Nadia's Deathblade now. Okay, so let's get down the Azuri. And yep, they go for the counter spell on that, so they were always going to get rid of that, I think. In that case, we'll go for the Wirewood Pride. We're only going to get a +2 buff on that. Is it each other elf? No, it's the number of elves in total on the battlefield. So in response to blocks, we'll buff that, and we'll get a few more elves ready for the Shamanic Revelation. Our opponent gets bolted by the Mana Crypt, which is helping us along in the Elvish aggro deck. Now an Eco Wellspring and a Mere Retriever. And continuing to swing in, we'll get rid of the Nadia's Nightblade here. We do have a couple of means of mass reanimation on our creatures, so might be able to make use of that. Again, we've got Menace on our commander, so the Sword of Feast and Famine will just be able to block a creature here. And a Timberwatch Elf. Alright, let's swing in with nearly all of our creatures. And they just block one of our elves. So we get a couple more elves, and we will go for the Shamanic Revelation now in order to regain some cards in hand. Alright, and get into a Mana Crypt of our own, as well as a Cavern of Souls, which should be useful against a blue deck. Obviously name Elf with that. Go for the Mana Crypt as well. And then do we want... I think we want to knock Summoning Sickness off the Timberwatch Elf to make it more difficult to block. And it's going to buff this as well, so we'll make even more elves, because this is +X+X, where X is the number of elves you control on a creature. So that might encourage our opponent to not swing in with the Feast and Famine. And now casting a big artifact spell, tapping down their creature in order to do that. And that is Noxious Gearhulk. So destroy a creature. And alright, surprisingly going after the Timberwatch Elf. Probably because they're going to hold these two back, so they'll be able to block our commander effectively. And they do hold them back. Okay, and that is a Skemfar Shadow Sage. Death Touch doesn't matter from the Elderfang Venom, but the Drain might. They obviously don't have any forests. Blackblade Reforged will get us a +4 buff, which isn't going to be enough to have it survive in battle. Assuming that these double block, which I dare say they will. Okay, so how's about we try to go as wide on our opponents as we can. Let's go for the Elvish Champion first. And then we'll go for the Elderfang Venom as well. And then we can just swing in with all of our tokens, I think. So they'll take 6 and then an additional 2, assuming that they block both creatures. We could force them to double block. And then they lose the Noxious Gearhulk. So yeah, let's do that as well. And let's really pressure them here. This is an aggro-based deck, so we should be turning sideways as much as we can. All the creatures have Death Touch when they go into attacks. And they do go for the double block. So we'll deal damage to the Noxious Gearhulk first, so that will go down. We can't deal damage to the Mere Retriever. So that gets rid of that. Our commander goes back into the command zone. We'll drain our opponent for 1. And we've got plenty of elves in play, so we're putting our opponent in a tricky spot here. Let's go for the Skull Clamp just for the sake of making use of the mana. Not the best idea to throw it out there, but might distract our opponent away from blowing up the Mana Crypt. Oh, we actually took them down further than I thought there. They're down to 3. Okay, so swinging in at us. We can't block that, so we'll end up discarding the Marin, I think. That is going to be way too slow here. We are missing haste. I was thinking about putting Concordant Crossroads in here, but I didn't know how reliant I would be on the tokens having haste. Alright, and our opponent decides to take themselves out with an Anguished Unmaking. That will lose them 3 life. All we would have done there is try to go wide on them, which we probably could have done with the tokens. We could have put an extra piece of power on one of them with the Skull Clamp because it wouldn't have died thanks to the buff from the Elvish Champion. And failing that, we could have just played this out, and this is a Gary for the new Elf Tribal decks, so that could have taken them out as well. So yeah, that was looking pretty good there. I don't know if that was a fully optimal Breya list. I don't think it really played like one, but this isn't a fully optimal Lathril deck for 1v1 either, so I think that was a fair shot. Couple of Golgari commanders this time. Lathril up against Slimefoot the Stowaway. We've got expensive cards in hand, and we don't even have any coloured mana, so I'm going to have to get rid of this one. Alright, into a Dork at least. Don't seem to have much luck getting into the mana Dorks here, unfortunately, but that is a good one, so we'll keep. And let's get rid of the Elven Ambush. Our opponent starts things off with a tapped Desert, and we've got an Urborg, so let's just go Command Tower into Jiraga Tree Speaker. And that is a Jade Mage from our opponent. They don't have black mana yet, so I'm not going to help them out by dropping the Urborg. They might struggle on their mana, so let's shock down the Overgrown Tomb instead. And we will level up the Jiraga so that it can tap down for 2 mana, and nothing to do with the 2 mana, unfortunately. So it can level up itself to level 2. Jade Mage swings in towards us, and they didn't make a land there, so the black mana may well have helped them. We'll continue to dodge that and go for the high market. Let's get down our commander here, and then we'll throw in a Deathrite Shaman as well. Now Song of Freyalise, which will allow their creatures to tap down for mana of any colour, so that might help them out next turn. They'll have at least 3. Might be able to go for a Cultivate or something. Alright, an Elvish Archdruid, so why don't we go for the Elvish Archdruid to get an additional token into play. That will also allow us to swing in with the Deathrite Shaman. Swinging in with both of those will give us access to a bunch of tokens. And they decide to block with the Jade Mage, surprisingly, so I'm guessing they're not going to use that to tap down for mana. Alright, yeah, and then pulling it back. I'd be very surprised to see them block here, but they do block. So they fancy their odds of having a land in play next turn. Okay, Fungal Infection. Target creature gets -1/-1 until the end of the turn. And you get a Saproling token. So these two will trade here. Actually fine with that. Before we saw the buff in the Elvish Archdruid, I was actually thinking of trading them that anyway. Then we get a bunch of tokens from the Lathril. And do we want a creature in play? Yeah. I think I'm going to drop the Urborg now, and we'll go for Nadia's Nightblade. Just in case there's a board wipe, we can ping them a little bit with the tokens that are in play. It's also going to be decent getting into the red zone because it's got a lot of toughness. Tapping the Saproling down for green mana anyway. making a bunch of saproling tokens, which we're not all that worried about. Okay, and Elvish Dreadlord. Don't have a sack outlet. We will go for the Guardian Project, I think. And then we'll throw down the Azuri Renegade Leader as well. That will draw us a card. Get into the Phyrexian Tower, we'll drop that. And then we'll buff all of our creatures with the Azuri. And let's swing in, see how far we can get them to 0 here. They do all have trample, so chumping won't do a whole lot. We'll get them down to 1. So all we have to do here is sacrifice one of our tokens to the land. I said that we didn't have a sack outlet before, but we actually do. Yeah, forgot about the 2 lands there. The reason that I have these lands in the deck is, one, you'd be surprised how often you can ramp with this. But also it is as a sack outlet for things like this, because I had actual sack outlets in the deck that I didn't really like. They didn't jive with the rest of the deck, so just being able to sack 1 or 2 creatures with something like this is all you really need, and yeah, just proved it there, knocking our opponent down to 0, thanks to sacrificing a creature with Nadia's Nightblade. Not a particularly fair one, I don't think. I don't think our opponent got off to too good a start there, so we'll try one more time. Oh, and just check the chat as well. Apologies to my opponent, didn't see this until the end of the game, they've already left now. But yeah, big thank you to Prozac 200mg for being a fan of the channel. Nice name. Lathril, this time up against Arcades, the Strategist. And that is a pretty damn good hand, so we'll keep that one. We are on the draw as well, so there's every chance that we can get into the other land that we need. And our opponent just drops a tap land. We'll probably just do the same. Let's get out the Woodland Cemetery. Make it so that they're not going to worry too much. Because when a Magic Online player worries, they might scoop early on us. This is a Crowsome Verge, by the way, so for 2 tap and sacrifice, they can grab a couple of lands. And getting in a Temple Garden tapped as well. Another land for us, so we'll throw down the Priest of Titania, see if they've got swords or anything. And our opponent just goes in for a 3rd land and passes. They haven't done anything yet. Are they going to blow up our commander? There's every chance. Let's just go for Lathril here. We're able to make a lot of mana from the Elvish Archdruid and the Priest of Titania, so if they do point removal over here, we'll be able to get it out easily enough again anyway. But no, looks like they're just holding up mana for the Crowsome Verge, so grabbing a couple of plains and forests, fixing their mana with a breeding pool. And they go for the last shock as well, a Hallowed Fountain. Okay, Deputy of Detention. Exile a target non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves play. Do we want to put it into the command zone? Yeah, I think we'll just put it into the command zone here. Like I said, don't mind recasting it again, really. Alright, so if we go Farhaven Elf, that'll give us 2. I think we just have to hedge our bets and go for the Elvish Archdruid here. That way we can generate a bunch of mana and maybe concentrate on ramping with Marwyn and the Farhaven Elf next turn, but maybe there's a counter spell here. Okay, an Arcane Denial. We'll draw 2 cards at least. Might actually allow us to get into a land here. Alright, and there's the land we want. Trailblazer's Boots will be good for later on. Now it's a Green Sun Zenith where X is 2. They've gotten themselves a Gate Creeper Vine. Search for a basic land or a gate, put it into your hand. And it was just a basic island that they went for there, so playing that out straight away. Which means they've got 2 blue mana held up, but not holding up counter magic seemingly. Okay, a Birthing Pod from our opponent. Haven't gotten into any of our artifact removal, unfortunately. He's swinging at us with a 1-3, we'll just take that. Alright, Heroic Intervention, I don't think I'm going to hold up. Let's go for Marwyn the Nurturer. And then we'll tap that down for 2. Let's go for the Farhaven Elf as well, which will put a plus counter onto the Marwyn, make it tap for more mana, and we'll get a swamp here. I think we've only got a couple of basic swamps in the deck, but we do want to be able to make black mana, obviously. Now Arcades entering the fray, so these creatures will deal damage equal to their toughness now. So we'll get hit for 5 here, just going to take this damage. And they've only held up a single piece of blue mana. They can only do this at sorcery speed. Haven't made use of the birthing pod yet. Let's go Verdant Catacombs. And maybe we just go for our commander here. So we'll drop the Timberwatch Elf. And that puts a counter on Marwyn. Allows the Priest of Titania to tap for 4. So yeah, let's just get our commander into play again. And then we'll probably go for the tapped Snow Jewel with the Verdant Catacombs. And we can hold up the Heroic Intervention with Marwyn here. Assuming the board stays like this, we're going to end up with a lot of tokens next turn, thanks to the Lathril being unblockable with the Trailblazer's Boots and the Timberwatch Elf. Obviously keeping the Trailblazer's Boots in hand so that we can drop it and equip it straight away, surprise our opponent with that. And they were going for something at the end of the turn, but then deciding against it. Stalwart Shield Bearers. Yeah, that is a Lord for all of their stuff, so it's just going to be a case of trying to outrace them, I think. Which I think we should be able to do. Might even go for Elven Ambush during the main phase before we get all of our tokens from Lathril, just for the sake of buffing it with the Timberwatch Elf even further. Also allows our dorks to tap for more mana. Alright, just swinging in with 1. So we'll take a hit for 4 here, I don't mind that. And now they're going for Birthing Pod. So not sure which creature they're going to sacrifice. Getting rid of the one that they swung in with so they can get a 3 CMC creature here. And that is a Carven Caryatid. Draw a card when it enters. It's a 2/7, so pretty heavy hitter as it stands at the moment. And then they draw from the Arcades as well, playing out a Temple Land, which allows them to scry. Now, we could go for the Elven Ambush now, but they might have some spot removal, and we won't be able to go for Heroic Intervention then, so I think we just go for the tap land here so that we don't draw into it. Okay, and a Wirewood Lodge is good to get down straight away. That will allow us to untap a target elf. So we'll tap down Marwyn for 4, and we'll go Elven Ambush. See if they've got any counter magic for that. They are holding priority, but apparently not. So get a bunch of Marwyn triggers, untap the Marwyn, and we'll tap that down again. Let's go Trailblazer's Boots. Put that onto the Lathril. And then it can be Hunter's Insight onto Lathril as well. So whenever that deals damage, we'll draw that many cards now. We'll put the buff on Lathril also. So it'll make a huge amount of tokens. That has now jumped up to a 12-13. Argument to be made for us untapping this instead to make it even bigger. But I think 12 will suffice here. So we can still use the Heroic Intervention if we need to. We're going to refill our hand here. So hopefully wasting that 2 mana that I just did won't matter. Swing in with our huge Lathril, Blade of Elves. And now they're going for something in response, maybe blowing up the Trailblazer's Boots. Heroic Intervention will save us from that. Okay, a Displace. So they're flickering their creatures. Is this on entry or cast? It's when it enters, so they'll draw 3 cards here, 2 from Arcades, 1 from this. And then they're looking to exile with the Deputy. Yeah, so obviously targeting our Lathril with that, we'll go for the Heroic Intervention now, which will have that fizzle because it now has hexproof, and hopefully we can draw into the Boots or the Greaves at this point, knocking our opponent down to 14 and 12 points of commander. Get ourselves a heap of Elves, and we draw a bunch of cards as well. Blackblade Reforged. We buff Marwyn a bunch as well. Yeah, we got Skull Clamp, so maybe it's worth going for Skull Clamp to try and protect our commander through this. Yeah, let's go Priest of Titania, taps for 22 mana. And we'll get out the Clamp. Then start clamping warrior tokens. Alright, got the Quest for Renewal, which I don't think we'll be able to make use of. Let's keep drawing. Alright, and there's the Lightning Greaves. I'll definitely get that down straight away. And we've actually got the Elder Fang Venom as well. Let me put that on the commander for free. Get this down as well. Might be able to get them here with an Aristocrat's Win. Alright, we've got 14 mana. We can Skull Clamp 14 of these tokens. And whenever we do that, we drain our opponent. So let's draw a bunch of cards and drain our opponent a bunch. Okay, just noticed that we've got this as well for tapping down the creatures, so we might have been able to get a win off with Lathril and Quest for Renewal anyway. But this way will suffice. Yeah, and our opponent sees what we're doing here. We've got 9 more mana, and we can drain 9 more times with the Skull Clamp, using it as a sort of sack outlet there. We don't actually have a regular sack outlet for doing things like that, and maybe we should if we've got Aristocrat effects in the deck. But I wanted to do something slightly different with this Elf Tribal deck, so going around the houses a little bit more with it there, but hopefully you all enjoyed it anyway. This is a sneak preview of Lathril, Blade of Elves. I'm not sure how this multiplayer deck will perform in multiplayer, but apparently it does alright in 1v1. Anyway, let me know what you all think, if you want to see this in multiplayer or not. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.